My name is Billy Casera, and I have been a news photographer and videographer for the past 30 years.
Billy, how did you get started in photography?
I had an aunt, my Aunt Frances, who was my favorite aunt in the whole world, and she used to bring her camera bag over to my house and take pictures. And I used to look in that camera bag, and it was almost like looking in a magician's chest of tricks and getting to look behind the scenes. And I loved that. And then one day, she gave me this camera for my birthday. I think I was like 11 years old. I used this camera and I started making little home movies with this camera. And that's how I got interested in photography.
When did you know you could be a professional photographer?
I didn't know that I could be a photographer, Stella, and that was the really funny thing about my whole career story is I thought I was just gonna work in TV, but I didn't know what I was gonna do. So I walked into a TV station, and the guy who I applied for the job with at this news station said, he goes, we have a job. You can come here work as a photographer for 3 months, but you have to find your own apartment. We're hardly going to pay you any money at all, and you have to move yourself from New York to Rhode Island on your own. We're not going to help you pay for that move. And he looked at me, probably thinking I was going to say, what are you kidding? I'm not doing that. I was like, great, I'll take the job. And that's how I became a news photographer.
What do you like about being a professional news photographer?
One of the things that I really like is I get to travel. I always dreamed about traveling because when I was a kid, I used to look at National Geographic and I just would say, okay, what's that place like? And then once I started working in television, I actually got to go to a lot of the places that I saw in National Geographic. So that was really cool.
What about any celebrities?
I've met a lot of presidents, President Clinton and Hillary Clinton, the Obamas. I've met all the Bushes, Jimmy Carter, President Ford, President Reagan. So I pretty much met every president since around 1974. I've met Lady Gaga, who I really, really liked working with. She was really nice, and we took her back to her old neighborhood in New York City.
We're gonna do it the New York way.
Okay. You're buzzing all of the buzzers?
Yeah. Someone will listen. Oh, we got it.
And she showed us where she wrote all of her first songs.
This was actually the very first song I ever wrote, and I was, I think I was 4.
And because of my job, Stella, I've worked with Angelina Jolie,
probably the best experience I've ever had.
Arnold Schwarzenegger, Bob Dylan.
And you're just not that person everybody thinks you are.
I don't really know.
Mick Jagger from the Rolling Stones. We work with a lot of sports people. In fact, last year we worked with R.A. Dickey, who was a knuckleball pitcher. And we had to get a special camera to try to capture in super slow motion this knuckleball floating, floating, floating as it headed towards the home plate. We were only allowed to have R.A. Dickey pitch 25 pitches because they didn't want his arm to get worn out. So we took this friend of mine who's now a pitcher in college, and we let him do all the practice pitches so that we could practice the camera move and make sure that we could focus on that ball properly. So we had that kid pitch like 50 pitches before we ever got R.A. Dickey to step out on the mound.
Have you ever been starstruck?
Celebrities tend to be very nice, especially when they're going on 60 Minutes, because they would like you to do a nice story about them. But the one person who really took my breath away was the Dalai Lama. You get to meet very famous people. Like today, for instance, I got this picture signed to me by this celebrity, Anne Dean. I don't know if you know her. She's a kind of a celebrity around here in Malibu. You may recognize her. I'm not sure, but she signed this for me. So that's a fun thing about working my job.
What was one of your favorite stories?
Recently, I worked with Michelle Knight. Michelle Knight had been kidnapped and held captive for 12 years, and then she got rescued. When she was rescued, she changed her name so she could have a fresh start and a new beginning in life. She wrote a book about her experience so that people would understand what had happened to her and what she had gone through. And now she's touring the country with her book, meeting people, signing autographs to the books, and feeling really good about her life and feeling good about helping to keep other people and other kids from getting kidnapped and being taken advantage of that way.
If you were to guess, how many cameras do you think you have?
If I had to take a guess, I would say I probably owned about 25 cameras, which might seem like a lot, but I've broken a lot of cameras.
Tell me a little bit about you and your family.
Okay, I grew up in Queens, New York, in a teeny tiny little house with 3 sisters and mom and dad and a cat. And the cat was my favorite subject. When I first started taking pictures, I probably took like 1,000 pictures of my cat. And now I have 2 teenage boys, and I'm married, and I live in New York. And guess what? I'm still taking pictures of my pet, which now is a dog named Twixie. And I take a lot of pictures of that dog.
Thank you, Billy, for being here today.
I feel like I'm sitting across from a very, very young Diane Sawyer. Take one. I'm gonna get rid of my gum.
How did you get started in photography?
Yes. And you look at me.
Quiet on set. Action! And we're live.